Hello again! This time we are taking you to two cities, the first being Dayton, Ohio, where we visit the Wright Brothers bicycle shop and explore the birthplace of aviation. We also tour the nearby and appropriately placed National Museum of the Air Force and view some of the most iconic and instrumental airframes of the past and up to the present. In addition to Dayton, we also traveled to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina and Kill Devil Hills, taking you to the second venue of the Wrights' unrelenting pursuit of flight. Here we view the spots where many of their historic firsts occurred during their conquest of the air. This story begins at the turn of the 19th century in the Wrights' hometown of Dayton, Ohio. Like much of industrialized America, the average American here has experienced a rapid increase in personal wealth and can now afford to pursue various avenues of pleasure. Within this time frame, a major fad is the bicycle. To wit, the city of Dayton itself is afire with invention and creation, ranking first in per capita patents granted. Surrounded within this environment, the Wrights shared in the prosperity, adding a successful bicycle business to their existing printing business. Although not college educated, the Wrights' drive, intellect, and pragmatic nature make them quite adept at analyzing problems and advancing reasoned solutions. Within this climate, the Wrights begin to solve the impossible. While most identify Kitty Hawk as the birthplace of flight, the truth is the bulk of the conceptualization and refinement took place in Dayton, Ohio. Many of the key locations and the associated artifacts are commemorated at several locations within the Aviation Trail. In this video, we take you to the two most significant places on this trail. The first being number 1, the Wright Dunbar Interpretive Center, and the second, number 5, the National Museum of the United States Air Force. The Dayton Aviation Heritage National Historic Park is both a long-winded name as well as being a place that encompasses multiple exhibits. In addition to the Wright story, the facility documents the famous poet and locally born Lawrence Dunbar, as well as presents the history of parachutes. For this video, we will confine ourselves to the topic of the Wright brothers. Entering the Interpretive Center, you immediately see a miniature Wright Flyer hanging above, piloted by Wilbur. Once inside, you come across a full-sized glider. The difference between the two apparatus is almost indiscernible. Only with careful inspection do you see the motor and propellers beside and behind the pilot, Wilbur. With so little difference, it is hard to grasp such a huge impact so few components can make, ultimately making the world a smaller place for humanity. Their story takes shape in the year 1899, when Wilbur writes to the Smithsonian and requests they provide him everything they have on the topic of aviation. The Smithsonian's response launches years of extensive study, testing, discovery, and invention. It includes thorough observation of birds and their use of wings during flight. It is not surprising, then, that within the gliders they create, the wings have a very similar appearance to that of large birds in flight. While others were also striving to achieve flight, the Wrights' approach was very different. They were determined to control the machine through a precise manipulation of the center of pressure on the wings and decided to induce a helical twist across the wings in either direction. The resulting increase in lift on one side and decrease on the other allowed the pilot to raise and lower either wingtip at will. Taking their glider to Kitty Hawk, the flexible wing design proved successful, and, returning to Dayton at the conclusion of 1901, they own all gliding records. In spite of this, they believe they are now farther from mastering flight than ever. The reason is the wings are not performing in accordance with their calculations. Marshalling their genius and ingenuity, they developed the wind tunnel, which in turn allows them to conduct hundreds of tests on wing designs, leading to the discovery that the basis of the calculations were off by 20%. Once again returning to Kitty Hawk in 1902, the corrected formula enables the updated wing design to supply the expected lift and associated level of control. With this testing, the brothers are convinced that the Wright Flyer II airframe is ready for the next step, motorized flight. Returning to Dayton, they calculate that they need a motor which delivers 8 horsepower and weighs less than 200 pounds. Considering they are not trained engineers, their precision is nothing short of astonishing. Failing in their search to find a suitable motor, they build their own. In a few short weeks, they produce a motor weighing in at 180 pounds and producing 12 horsepower. The Wrights' propeller design is even more astonishing. Finding that there is no scientific or engineering formals to work from, they develop their own from scratch. The level of their success and precision is staggering. They produce propellers that are nearly 70% efficient and eventually improve this to nearly 78. Modern propellers are only slightly better, achieving between 82 and 84% efficiency. The next section transitions from aviation and introduces the Wrights' personal life, including their immediate family, as well as how the neighbors view their activities. The setting begins from a storefront where we overhear a woman discussing the Wrights' pursuits with the store clerk, viewing the men as wasting their time on dreams and foolishly ignoring their businesses. To fully appreciate the accomplishments of the brothers, it is worth stepping back in time to the late 1800s, as their story is one that almost didn't happen. While neither brother attended college, Wilbur, who was older than Orville by 4 years, had hoped to attend Yale University and to play sports, but due to a freak ice hockey accident, his plans were changed forever. Instead, he stayed home to care for his ill mother until her death. After her passing, Wilbur joined Orville in his printing business, and the partnership was born. Stepping out of the interpretive center, we head over to the Wrights' bicycle shop next door. This location is their 6th and final storefront. It was opened in 1897, their best year in the bicycle business. Combined here, they earned about $3,000 at a time when an upper-middle-class worker was earning about $500 a year.
We get to this bigger tire in order to more easily access the pedals.
All right, they listed several cost points for bicycles. Would that have been the $100 bicycle, or are you just talking evolution?
No, this is an ordinary bicycle, so late 1860s, early 1870s.
Okay, so this is predating.
Yes.
Don't fall down. That's what you do. At some point, you got to go, They're already between the two. Beyond the Wrights' incredible intellect, systemic analytic nature, and boundless drive, they chose to prioritize developing a fully controlled craft first, and this is what pushed them to the front of achieving flight. Looking at the simple tools within the shop and recognizing the limited resources the Wrights had available to them, it is difficult to imagine they could achieve so much in such a short period of time. While the shop is a recreation developed from pictures taken of their shop, what is before you is a close rendering of what they actually worked with. Seeing the simple setup further reinforces their incredible genius. With better than half a day remaining, we take flight and head over to the Museum of the U.S. Air Force. The massive complex, located at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, is a short drive away. The series of buildings and open areas is the largest military museum in the world. Each area contains a specific era of aviation history. Frankly, our half day here will only allow us to view about a third of the museum, and even then, we aren't partaking in any of the immersive displays. At the entry, you will find a map of the complex which displays which eras reside in which building. I suggest carefully reviewing this map and note the locations and their respective eras. Time will fly by on you, and you will want to make sure that you see those areas which are most important to you. We begin within the early years gallery. The displays here are only a few short years after the Wrights have refined their flying machine at the nearby Hoffman Prairie Field. These planes are dramatically different from the Wright Flyer, including enclosed fuselages, covered wings, and much more powerful inline and rotary engines. Naturally, the museum includes the Wright Flyer and displays a beautiful wind tunnel which Orville installed in his lab in 1916. With the passing of Wilbur in 1912, Orville has sold and turned over their company.
They look, I mean, it's just, all those up there look just like what they started with.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing's huge.
What's amazing is that's all wood.
What you see in this wing is an aileron, a dramatic improvement in flight control from the Wrights' hinged wing design. Next, we head into the World War II gallery, where several of my favorite airplanes of the past are located, including the B-17 and the P-51 Mustang. The planes in the World War II section are now far more advanced, and looking at the smaller fighter planes, you can see a great deal of similarity to the Cessnas and other personal planes being flown today. Coming up to one of my favorite planes, the P-51 Mustang. I remember fondly watching these planes race around pylons on TV in my youth. I guess I just like the looks of their sleek design. Yep, there it is, the plane that brought in the jet age, the first jet fighter, the Messerschmitt's Me-262.
At the time, a bomber crewman could go home after 25...
Another of my favorite planes, the B-17. Again, its airframe is aesthetically attractive to my eyes, but what I find appealing was the plane's toughness, bringing crews home while experiencing extensive damage. And the final of my favorite planes, the SR-71. Again, I am drawn to the looks, but the mystique of this plane is very compelling. Originally named the RS-71, the name had to be changed when President Johnson incorrectly called it the SR-71 when he announced the existence of the plane during a press conference. For the sake of efficiency, we suggest leaving the memorial park to last, as it is not time restricted like the buildings. Just be sure not to miss it. The memorials themselves are designated by and remembrances of the crews and families of men and women who have served. From Dayton, we are making a beeline to the Wright Brothers National Memorial in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Well, truthfully, we made a bunch of stops in between, but those hops and stops will become part of a future video. Also, technically, the memorial is in the town of Kill Devil Hills, which is adjacent to the town of Kitty Hawk. The Wright Brothers National Memorial, unlike its Ohio counterpart, is singularly focused on the Wright brothers. In fact, much of what is presented here today is solely to do with the brothers' flights on December 17th of 1903. We are sincerely grateful that you are taking the time to join us on our travels. We do have a favor to ask of you. If you liked the video, please hit like, and we'd greatly appreciate if you would subscribe. Again, we humbly thank you. We get our passport book stamped here, and I find it interesting that the stamp mentions both Ohio and North Carolina. For historians, the park has two areas of significance. The first being the area of the first flights, beginning at the first flight boulder, and the distance of each of the 4 flights as shown. The second area, captured within the circle, are the sand dunes where the men launched gliders from. We take you to both locations. As previously noted, the memorial here prioritizes the first flight events, and this is made clear with the full-sized recreation of the Wright Flyer before you. You can make a full 360-degree walk around the plane. My eyes are drawn to the fragile wings with a minuscule amount of curve. For some reason, the display puts the back of the plane to the front. Perhaps this is because this is the direction the Wrights flew, or because the propellers are placed in the back of the plane. In any case, it seems odd to me. Worth mentioning is that the modern design of planes has wings at the rear of the plane, called elevators. The Wrights plane has the elevator wing in the front. Why I find this curious is they studied birds to learn how to fly, and this wing mimics some of the function of tail feathers. One would assume that they would put this wing at the back of the plane as a result. Upon exiting the front of the building, you are facing the sand dunes where the glider test flights were launched. Turning to the right is the strip of land where the Wrights flights took place. Today is a very nice day with calm winds, generally, but even so, they are still blowing strong enough that you can feel and hear the wind. Leaving the building, we first head out to the sand dunes where the Wrights launched their glider hundreds of times. The dunes are no longer exposed sand, having had grass planted on them to prevent their erosion by the wind. A large monolith sits on the tallest of the dunes. It is here where the majority of the gliding tests were launched from.
The conquest of the air.
It is not unreasonable to assume that from the date at which the Wrights achieved their historic flight in December of 1903, that recognition and accolades followed, with aviation quickly maturing and becoming a mass-consumed commodity. This, however, was far from what actually occurred. Not only was their accomplishment largely ignored at the time, but 4 days after their successful flight, Samuel Langley, who was well known and being funded by the government, crashed his design, and that is what made headlines nationally. If you have ever walked on sand for any length of time, or hiked up a large sand dune, you know that it is quite difficult. The Wrights did this hundreds of times while carrying a 22-foot wide glider that weighed nearly 100 pounds. From atop the hill, called Big Kill Devil Hill, looking back you see how high up the men were for their test flights. From the front of the monolith, you see a set of figures and a replica of the Wright Flyer. This setup recreates the Wrights event, and it offers a nice way for a person to imagine they are at the actual event, as well as to get some cool pictures.
It's like a rail. Don't think I knew that. Look, it's on a rail.
The picture is a picture.
Oh, yeah. Again, he's got the little thing in his hand that goes click.
That's the type of camera that takes a picture on glass.
Walking up to the back of the replica allows a great view of the motor and propellers. The two large propellers rotate in opposite directions to counterbalance the effects of twists they've produced. Walking back on the path to the site of the first flights, you first come across the iron rails. The Wrights adjusted the rails to take best advantage of the direction of the wind. If the wind changed, they moved the rails. The Flyer, one speed, slow, and it slogged along the rails with someone holding the wing as it progressed to keep the Flyer from tipping over. This system was overhauled in Ohio when they went to a slingshot-like device, similar to what is in use today on carrier ships to launch planes. The Wrights once called the conditions here like being in the Sahara Desert. Once they accomplished their maiden flight in 1903, neither returned again for another 5 years. Upon returning, they found that their glider and buildings had been destroyed by the shifting sands.